Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How the Industry is Preparing for T+1 across the UK, the EU and Switzerland. We've got a very packed 45 minutes ahead of us exploring where the latest challenges lie and what the major blind spots are, and exactly what your firms need to do to prioritise over the remainder of 2026. My name is Emma Johnson and I head up industry advocacy and insight here at the ValueExchange, and I'm unashamedly a lover of all things T+1 as I co-lead the settlements workstream in the EU T+1 Industry Committee and the SSI Task Force, and I co-lead the risk and compliance workstream for the UK AST. Now, before I introduce our phenomenal lineup of similar T+1 lover industry infrastructure experts, I want to frame our conversation this afternoon with a quick reality check using the key findings from our latest EU, UK and now Switzerland pulse survey, which pulled some insights from over 600 financial services professionals globally. There's so many interesting themes that have been unearthed in this latest T+1 pulse survey, including, on paper, momentum looks to be spectacular. The UK is currently leading global preparation with 83% of firms actively engaged, closely followed by the EU and Switzerland both sitting at 79%. But if you look under the bonnet, there's a bit of an execution gap. Whilst 51% of firms have started their T+1 project work by Q1 2026, 57% of the buy side have yet to start any development work. Furthermore, 22% of all firms haven't even completed their cost assessment yet. Project time frames are compressing into 2027, the year of migration, and the percentage of firms expecting to complete their T+1 builds has effectively doubled over the last year, pushing 2027 into a tight corner. 63% of firms plan to finish their automation work in 2027, the very year where we're meant to be completing industry testing, for the 85% who are already on course for that. But really, the most concerning stat from this latest run of research for me is that on average, 67% of market participants do not believe their service providers are ready to support their transition. Only 39% think CSDs are ready, and 81% view prime broker readiness as a little bit substandard. So I'm joined by some absolute experts here this afternoon, and I'm very pleased to introduce Celine Duquaine, Matt Johnson, Simon Belser, and Marko Niederheide. And panelists, perhaps you could introduce yourselves. Start with you, Celine.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. So my name is Celine Duquaine. I'm a product manager, settlement at Euroclear, one of the Euroclear lead on T+1, and also co-chairing the EXDA T+1 task force.
Let's go to you, MJ.
Afternoon, thanks Emma, and thanks for inviting me to talk today. Yes, I'm Matt Johnson, or MJ as I'm affectionately known. So I am the Global Head of Strategy for DTCC's Institutional Trade Processing business.
And Simon?
Sorry, yes, good afternoon. My name is Simon Belser. I'm heading up the operations at SIX as well as in Euroclear in Spain. And in regards to T+1, I'm also heading up the project in Switzerland at SIX SAS in order to get it done in time and complete.
Thank you, Simon. And Marko?
Hopefully not least, my name is Marko Niederheide. I work for Clearstream, both on the European side, but also on the Luxembourg side, and I'm the business product manager for T+1. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of T+1 as you are, Emma. And besides that, settlement efficiency currently is my other big hobby besides that.
Kindred spirits. It's great to have you all here. Thank you so much. And just a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. We do have a Q&A feature built into this webinar, so please do feel free to submit your questions throughout the session. We'll weave in as many as we can, and where we can't, we will respond to you offline, so your voice will get heard. So right, let's get going, shall we? There's a lot to unpack. I think really the first theme is, are we on track? The headline figures from the survey show steady progress moving forward. But as we mentioned, the underlying data reveals that there perhaps is some development work being pushed deep into 2027. And interestingly, the perceived overall impact of T+1 on trade processing has dropped from 3.4 down to 3.1. Is that a positive, or are we, hiding things under the carpet potentially? So, Celine, I think if we can start with you, please, and looking at this from Euroclear's perspective, does the industry's progress in this latest pulse survey broadly match the experience you're seeing with your dialogue with your clients?
Yeah, well, I'll first start at, I think we've made progress, and I like to see the bright side of life. So I will say that this is very encouraging to see that progress is there. The results are there. It's true that we have a bit of differences across the respondent, and we see difference if it's a smaller firm, if across the region it's not uniform, but progress is there. So that's really positive, and we're really transitioning from planning into implementation. Now, do we hear the same? And of course, I'm lucky to represent the EU side, but also the UK side of the migration. And I can say that the results are quite similar. We see the readiness progressing. We see the question raised being more and more precise. So that's really the proof that we're no longer contemplating, oh, yeah, we're losing a date. No, we're now really looking into understanding what's behind the real migration to T+1. How is the business going to shift? How are we evolving? So that's really interesting. You mentioned something about the level of confidence, and clearly as well there we see in the UK and in the EU the same worry that it's really a collaborative effort. It's a chain. Everybody needs to be ready, and we see that same worry, I would say, across the two regions. So.
I'll mute myself then. Thank you very, very much. I think, Marko, if you can bring you in here, please. So from a Clearstream point of view, are you seeing a similar picture across your landscape, or are some pockets moving faster than others, would you say?
I don't want to bore the audience here, but in principle, I could probably repeat what Celine was just saying. So if you would have if we would have had the meeting like 3 months ago, I would have said, "Boy, is anybody interested in T+1 at all?" Because the number of questions that we're getting or have been getting a couple of weeks ago was okay, what do we need to do actually? Which kind of indicated, okay, people just need to get familiar with what does T+1 mean and how does it impact themselves. But similar as Celine was saying, as time moves on, we see now more detailed questions, even going down to okay, what's going to change on field level, and that makes me a bit positive, that people have woken up and people are looking into this right now. And could we be further away? Yes, I'm pretty sure. Because one thing that we're not getting at the moment is really questions. Okay, how can we test and all these things? And here people are, the CSDs in particular, already preparing themselves for how to test things in T+1. But overall, I guess we're there. Or we're getting there. We're not fully there yet. We're getting there, but it will be I'd say a rough ride still.
Yeah, a rough ride. Yeah. I think I hear you on that one. Now, Simon, bringing you in from a Swiss markets point of view, if we can, in the first instance, and it's the first time we've had all three jurisdictions in our pulse survey. So thank you for joining us on this. So I think despite starting the formal planning process later than the UK and EU, I think the survey really just shows that Swiss market is really sitting at a comparable level. I think 79% engagement, the same as the EU. So I think is it safe to say, Simon, that the Swiss market is successfully playing catch up, or are there some hidden hurdles unique to the Swiss ecosystem that are yet to be unearthed or in the process of being unpacked?
Absolutely. No, I think it's an absolute fair statement. I think we are catching up, indeed. I think it's, to be honest, it's the Swiss market, it's with Swiss franc. I think it's a bit slightly easier, let's say, start from that point of view. And yes, we are on track in the Swiss market, but we are definitely not yet there where we need to be until next year. The direction is positive, and the market is broadly aligned. That's important, and broadly aligned even as well with the European Union as well as with UK. But the execution phase now, that will need to intensify. I think now we are heading to the summer break, but for sure, once we are in August, we'll pick up again.
Yeah. Have a little break just to recharge the batteries over the summer, and then we can get going. There's lots to do for sure. MJ, now you're in a very unique position here, I think, from a DTCC point of view, obviously part of a broader franchise who led the industry just 2 years back. So you've probably got some muscle memory, I think, going on here. But looking at Europe's current pace through the lens of North America's experience, does this feel like the right pace, or do you think Europe is potentially underestimating the work needed with just 15 months to go?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to look at this probably from a realistic perspective as well as a logistical perspective. You're right, in the US it was different. The company I represent were kind of like the project manager, for want of a better phrase, in regards to mobilising the US market. And it's a single currency, one CSD, 2 CCPs. That word fragmentation is going to get mentioned a lot as we cover more of the European jurisdiction. But I think realistically, we are where we are, and I think the progress is being made. What you need to understand and really kind of appreciate is you're moving across multi-FMIs, multiple regulatory oversight, multiple regulatory bodies and so on. And so getting that alignment is definitely not easy. So I think from a realistic perspective, the mobilisation and the work Andrew and Giovanni are doing has been fantastic. I think early mobilisation of task forces and working streams and technical SMEs has been really paramount to where we are today. But then you go back to your stats at the beginning from a more logistical perspective, there's still a number of, probably we'll call out the buy side, there's pockets of buy sides that aren't ready. We don't know why they're not ready. Obviously, these buy sides are also viewed to be problematic from an allocation confirmation perspective too. So I think it's going to take some more coercing, there's going to take some more conversations. I think Andrew and Giovanni, you've still got some work to do, but I think what they've done so far from a documentation perspective, a mobilisation perspective, and more importantly, a collaboration perspective has been really, really good. And you can't really fault with what they've done. It's been a great achievement so far, but it's always difficult to change behaviour and then coerce people to do things that they sometimes feel they're not on the hook for doing.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think, just from having trodden the path for the US, it's easier for Europe to go second, and that we've got those learnings, haven't we now? I think we know that industry mobilisation, a figurehead to kind of drive everyone forward, is so vital. So we've got the jigsaw puzzles are in place. It's just putting all the pieces together, I guess, now. But you said two magic words, MJ, allocations and confirmations. And for T+1 in Europe, it's not just a 2027 deadline. We have a number of recommendations that are due to drop and be in the EU, some of which become regulation in 2026. And I think here the survey has thrown out a bit of a kind of warning shot here, in that more than 1/3 of firms expect to completely miss the industry's end of 2026 deadlines for allocations and confirmations to take place on trade dates on T0. Specifically, 34% are on track to miss it in the UK, and 38% in the EU, as I mentioned, the level 2 for CSDR. So MJ, look, this is your sweet spot, and opening with you. So same-day allocations and confirmations risk being treated, I think, as an isolated process. They're in the middle office, they're not necessarily part of the broader downstream processes, but they are the foundation of the entire T+1 timeline. Why do you think it's so hard to hit this, this milestone? What's blocking us?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Kind of breaks my heart to a certain degree, because there's no reason why you can't achieve this already. I won't go into the details around vendor platforms, electronification of services and so on, because these tools have been available for a very, very long time. I think, again, it does kind of come down to behaviour. But what I would say, when you look at the importance of the confirmation and allocation process, if you look at it from a T1 recommendations perspective, I'm pretty sure they're the only recommendations that have been brought forward into 2026. So that shows, I think, the concern that the task forces and the industry committee have in regards to, making sure we get the fundamental basics right. I think I'm probably going to repeat myself, so if people have heard me at conferences over the last kind of 6 weeks or so. But if you imagine post-execution is where the confirmation allocation process takes place, it's the first entry point into post-trade or into the middle office, into the back office. Getting that really intrinsically important process, if you capture that incorrectly, it has a whole multitude of downstream knock-on effects, whether you're, a trade capture firm, you're a middle office, and then you start to look at the settlement agency network, custodians, sub-custodians, local agents, and so on. They can only act on the information that they're given. So if the entry point information is not correct, then guess what's going to happen from a settlement perspective? There's going to be a lot of running around trying to fix exceptions when we get to that kind of pre-settlement layer at the CSDs, and obviously which the guys are way closer to than I am. It's also the first time to get things right. Those allocations that buy side send to the broker dealers, those are the positions, those are the shapes that are going to ultimately settle down at the CSDs. So it's very, very important to understand what that looks like as quickly as possible. It's also an opportunity to really start to layer in core components and core data into that workflow service. So it's not just matching economics, capturing position, risk and size of allocation and so on. It's your opportunity to share SSIs. It's your opportunity to agree on P-set, or maybe not. If you don't agree on P-set, at least be extremely transparent as to where you expect that transaction to settle. And again, if you get that component right, in theory, that makes the life of the CSD and the life of the custodian so much easier, because they're operating on information, that helps them validate, reconcile, and ultimately get settlement performed in a timely manner on T1.
Yeah, I think that's a great scene setter, and I couldn't have described it any better myself. So thank you for that, MJ. And I think, if more than a third of the market is lagging on T+0 allocation and confirmations, the downstream implications could be significant. So we've got three experts who are sitting in the driving seat who could, feel the pinch from any upstream, weaknesses. So maybe Marko, I can come to you for reaction and anything to add from a CSD point of view.
The main thing is something, we don't feel it ultimately. It's our participants who will feel that if the deadlines aren't met. And one thing which there are two things which stuck with me. And one thing we see it about today, between 75 and 85% of the instructions are in our system at the end of trade day. Is that where we should be? No. Clearly, there's room for improvement. And I'm pretty sure that some of the delays is attributed to what MJ has been saying. Simply that brokers are waiting for the allocation, asset managers are waiting for the confirmation. But maybe one thing, that's the second point, which maybe not be too worried, because a number of transactions that we're seeing are not necessarily between the broker and asset manager, but are also interbroker. And also from where I've been working in the past, and also what I got from some clients as feedback, is they don't necessarily wait until they have all the paperwork done. And paperwork, I also mean the electronic confirmation, but they send the instruction as soon as the trade is done. Yeah, they book it. It goes to the middle office, back office. If all goes well, they're completely unseen, and is in the market 15 minutes after the trade has been done. Now there are intricacies and difficulties in some other trade setups, and no doubt about that. And for that, I think it's important that we get the allocation confirmation process right. But I think it is only one piece of the puzzle that we need to put together.
Yeah, that's true, and I think 75 to 80% of instructions, being received on trade day is a positive starting point. I guess the question is, will they, are they matched, and how can we get that number up? So maybe Celine, if I can come to you. Oh yeah, no, you go.
With your question, Emma, you triggered something. Apologies, Celine. This is not very gentlemanlike. With that, there is clearly room for improvement. Yeah, because to go back to the 75 to 80%, we see at least 5 to 7 percentage point less being matched. Yeah, so you don't have 100% in the system at the end of the day. You only have about, let's say, 80. Yeah, but of those 80, only 75% maybe really are matched. Yeah, and then if you look at when the settlement starts, you immediately run into issues if you don't have all transactions in and not all transactions matched. And now I do this, and let's talk. Apologies again.
No worries at all. But it's perfect because you've opened up the topic on what is not matched on time, and I think that's also why allocation and confirmation, even if it's a process that is not visible really for the CSD, so we can't really comment on the process itself. I think it's really the starting point on the settlement process, and if the allocation and confirmation process is done on time and correctly done, as MG said, it will allow you to have your trades in a correct format as well when it's sent to the CSD, allow for the matching to happen on time, and then obviously de facto settlement to happen on time behind it. I think it's key that today in a T+2 world, we see around like 20% of late matching fails. So trades either not being there or incorrectly formatted so that they can't find a matching leg. Today you have one full day between the trade date and the settlement date to fail cure those trades, to cancel, rebook, or take any necessary action to have your trade matched on time. Tomorrow we're losing that day, and that is really key. It's not just the settlement cycle. Oh yeah, we don't settle T2, we settle T1. It's really that one day that was there to take all the measures, all the action to allow for the settlement. So I think it's really key that process ahead of the CSD on the allocation and confirmation is already improved and enhanced so that we can at CSD see the benefits of that as well from a matching result perspective. CSDR penalties won't disappear, of course, with T+1, unfortunately. They won't be really changed by T+1, but still, I think that's going to be key to start working from the earliest stage so that at CSD level, settlement is occurring properly.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think, settlement efficiency, we've worked too hard to let it slip. So thank you for mentioning that. And Simon, like from a Swiss market point of view, you haven't got a 2026 deadline for allocation and confirmations, but that's not to say it's not a critical process with downstream implications. Anything to add from your side, please?
Yes, look, I can only repeat and reiterate what all the colleagues have said so far. I mean, a CSD can only, let's say, instruct or process whatever they receive. That's one of the facts that's easy. And the other one, whenever there are mistakes in the earlier part of the queue, I think we can't really fully compensate those, let's say, mismatches until the settlement day. So therefore, it's absolutely key to have all those processes automated and standardized across the whole value chain. Otherwise, we will see a major, let's say, failure on the mismatches as well as on the late settlements. I think that's key. From a Swiss perspective, it's not. I don't really worry too much about the domestic part, but for sure, based on the nature as well from the Swiss banking industry, we have a lot of cross-border transactions, and I think that's also a key element where we have to work, where we have dependencies with global custodians, with brokers, with service providers, and other CSDs. And that's significant. And we currently invest a lot of time in order to make sure that we have those connectivities set up correctly in order to make sure that we have an SDP process in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think STP, it's the first time we've heard that today. So yeah, it's a really good point to raise. Thank you for that. And I think, moving along and just thinking about challenges, I think you've raised some perfect challenges there, panelists, so thank you. I think if we look back 6 months ago in the last poll survey, we were mostly losing sleep over like legacy technology and system changes, so that STP point, that automation. But I think today, the latest survey, the anxiety is kind of shifting outwards, and it's the everybody else challenge. I think over a third of the buy side is highly anxious about custodian dependencies and counterparty readiness, while the sell side is also showing a lot more kind of structural confidence. But I think obviously it's all interconnected ecosystem. So MJ, I'm going to come to you if I can first. And when firms talk about this fear of external readiness and managing third-party dependencies, what does that practically mean for how they need to kind of reshape their operating models right now?
Yeah, no, it's hugely important, and I think it's really going to become amplified over the next kind of 8 to 10 months or so as people really get into the nuts and bolts of their projects. I mean, that's 67% of your respondents that have concerns with vendor readiness. That really kind of hit home with me because obviously the business line that I represent at DTCC is probably viewed as a vendor, our matching platform and our SSI repository and so on. So I think the word resiliency is probably going to come into play quite a lot. And just to kind of explain what I mean by that, there's several pillars or like factors that you need to think about from a resiliency perspective. First of all, it's self-governance, how you're managing your own workflows and your own resiliency. I think firms are very open-eyed that they don't do everything via proprietary systems. There's a lot of off-the-shelf platforms that are bought and utilised. So it's understanding business continuity management as well, are you stress testing volumes? Are you stress testing output of messaging and so on? I think something that's quite important as well when you have a vendor dependency is mapping, interconnections, interdependency risk. Are you aware of all the methods and protocols that are being used by yourself and your vendor to connect to market? Is it up to date? Is it up to speed? Is it up to standard? I think you mentioned something that's hugely important as well, Emma, third-party dependency management. Who are you using? What are you using them for? What are these capabilities and the SLAs they've got in place, when things don't always end up in a happy day scenario. And I think one thing that may come to fruition a little bit more, whether it's before we move to T1 or whether it's after, is cyber resiliency as well. I mean, from our perspective, it's definitely something that's got our attention, especially when you look at the advancement of AI, some of these Mythos engines that are actively looking at vulnerability when they're interacting with platforms. So again, it's something that's hugely important as well. And I think when you look at things from a post-trade perspective, you're actively sending crucial information that carries things like cash accounts, bank accounts, security accounts. If you're not doing that over a trusted, encrypted, robust mechanisms that, hugely resilient to all kind of attacks, then, that information gets into the hands of the wrong people. That's quite interesting for them and not so interesting for the person sending it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is that magnifying glass, isn't it? I think everything is under a magnifying glass, and it's often what we haven't really thought about. And from a cyber point of view, resilience, also it's so important. And I think, in the UK AST, like the risk and compliance work stream, hopefully we can kind of, get into the nitty gritty on some of this and then provide some guidance and share that across with the EU and Swiss task forces. So yeah, good points. Thank you very much, MJ. And I guess, like Celine, just holistically, then this kind of puts a lot of pressure on core market infrastructure to provide certainty. We're looking to the FMIs, although you can't always control everything. And 61% of respondents cite a poor readiness perception around CSDs. What do you think about that?
It is surprising indeed. I think there's quite a lot of work being done at CSD level. It's true that while CSD can already settle T+1, that's something we've heard from the beginning, right? I think there's still a lot of work that is being done from CSD to also make everything possible to ensure that the settlement efficiency will be available and will be maintained in the T+1 environment, right? So there's a lot of tools that exist at CSD to ensure that. But I think probably that sentiment is also coming from the fact that, of course, analysis had to be done at CSD level as well, and then only could information be shared and cascade down to the participant. And as we've mentioned, it's a chain. So CSD have now published, I think for almost everyone, we've published our changes, our adaptation, our recommendation, and then custodian have to cache that up, settlement agent have to cache that up, and then pass it on as well to the entire chain. I think to reassure everyone, we will be really have to work on communication. Communication is going to be key. It has been key, but it will remain key up until the implementation, and even after in the weeks that will follow the implementation and the migration to T+1. I think it's an opportunity as well to mention that CSDs have also published through EXTA a dashboard gathering the main information about the settlement recommendation when testing, if it will be possible, and also about corporate action scenarios. So this is, I think, a great source of information for everyone to look at. It also pinpoint you to the documentation, the more detailed communication of all the CSDs. So definitely we need to look into that. So yeah, I think our role is really to keep that discussion ongoing with our participant and with the industry to ensure that everybody understands the challenges. We understand as well the challenges that our participant may face, so that if need be, we can react and we can support them. So I think that's going to be my keyword: communication.
It's a good word, yeah. It's the first time we've heard that today as well, so thank you for that. And I think, Marko, just over to you on that point as well. I think, the relationships, the communication, the responsibility, the trusted voice. Do you see any sort of shifts between the CSDs, like custodians, maybe, and market participants over the next 15 months?
We're talking about keywords. One keyword that I was expecting Celine to talk about, but then she probably was too humble to say is collaboration. Because in the end, some people, when I'm a bit more cynical, say T+1 is not about the CSDs, even though we are more and more in the spotlight. T+1 is about everything that happens before the CSD. Yeah, but nonetheless, what we see also on the CSD side is a very large level of collaboration. Yeah? So I mentioned this in the beginning. Yeah, we talk about how can we enable testing between the different CSDs across the different markets. Yeah? But then also looking at Celine, people may know that there are two ICSDs who operate something called the bridge, where you have a real integrated link between two big ICSDs, and as you can imagine, this is a huge project to make sure that also on a T+1 scale this works between the two ICSDs. And I only joined the project a little later, but I know that these discussions have started much earlier than only after at the beginning of the year. Yeah, so these are discussions which have started as soon as we know that the roadmap has been published and what the date was, so that the planning can take place. What I think in terms of really the challenge right now is, even though you gave us nice figures today, the point is, the challenge is keep the pressure high somehow. Yeah? And even though everybody is now looking forward to the summer holiday, it's good to have holidays, and they had to be there, but you need to have this planned properly to make sure you stay within your own time plan and don't miss anything of the developments that you may have to do.
That's a very good message. Get your homework done first, kids, before you can go on holiday. Simon, I think the web gets knottier when you factor in like cross-border configurations and complex instruments. You mentioned cross-border, I think, earlier, multi-listed securities, ETFs. How should firms be keeping check on their cross-border counterparty readiness to ensure they don't get caught out before they go on holiday?
I would say, look, for Switzerland, T+1 readiness is only as strong as the cross-border chain around it. I think that's an important feature we try to keep in our mind. First needs to validate not only their own readiness, but also the readiness of their providers, of their counterparties. I think that's important.
Well, I think, is that just me? I think your sound...
Losing a bit, Simon.
Is it better right now?
That's better. Yeah. Perfect.
Maybe I should just be a bit louder. Okay, sorry. No, firms and clients, they need to be more confident or they need to be confident about their clients, about their counterparties, and about their brokers to make sure that they are all set up correctly in their, let's say, in the value chain. Regarding ETFs, I think we have to consider that on ETFs, we might have maybe different fund dealing cycles. Also, we have to talk to the market makers, especially in the cross-border part where we have a lot of movements in the ETF part, in the ETF markets. This needs to be aligned very closely and very efficiently as well. Transfer agents will be part of that business. Finally, as well, the timing of the underlying markets. I think these are aspects and features we have to take into consideration. So this is a good, let's say, example that ETFs, or it shows that with ETFs that T+1 is not only a settlement topic, it's much more behind that. It affects product structure, it affects investor-facing processes, and the cross-border operating models, they need to be reviewed early. That's my message to the market before starting to testing, before collaboration, collaboration is important, as Marko said. So that's really a team effort across the different, let's say, borders within Europe.
I think that the whole team sport element of T+1, I think we can't underline that enough. And just making sure that everyone who is involved in the broader ecosystem knows that this is happening and their role within it. So thanks for shining a light on that, Simon. Now, I think we could just about pull this off. We've got another round, another theme to explore, and that is, we're back in September. We've had a little break. What lies ahead? What's next? So, panelists, if we can maybe just take 2 minutes each, probably. What is the number one priority or metric that firms must anchor themselves to over the next 12 months to make sure that they are ready and they survive the transition? So let's go with MJ first.
Yeah, I'll probably look at this slightly different from the rest of the guys, just because the position that we play kind of in that post-execution space. So I'll just talk to that. But I think I'm a big believer that data tells a story, and a lot of these decisions need to be made via data-driven exercises. So we've really started to interrogate our own platform, what we do. We've put a lot of enhancements in to our core set of analytics that our clients get access to. And I'm hoping that some of these stats are going to resonate well and hopefully keep Marko happy, definitely from that, when we look at the disparity between a post-execution match versus that pre-settlement match. So looking at the last cut of data we performed, which I believe was at the end of June, so across the EU 20 markets, UK, Switzerland, of course, from an equities perspective, we're seeing same-day match agreed rates on average being above 98%. And wow. Of course, there's clients that are achieving 100% on a daily basis. The really interesting piece for me is in fixed income, where when we looked at the data through 2025, the same-day match rate was around 88.5% to 89%. That's now jumped up to 93.5%. So there's obviously a lot of work and a lot of focus has been done within fixed income markets. I'm going to use those 4 dreaded letters again, PSET or PSET, especially as they're a big recommendation from both UKST and EUIC. PSET submission rates across the CTM platform are improving significantly since Q1 2025. On average, I think 97% plus of trades in CTM now have a PSET enrich, which is a huge positive, especially as PSET plays such a key role from a recommendation perspective. And another reason while we're mandating the PSET is a data point that's captured on CTM traffic from October 3rd this year. And we can't really ignore SSIs and highlighting the key role that SSIs play in a successful T1 campaign and successful T1 projects. Alert now holds over 17.5 million SSIs. The real interesting piece of information there is nearly 60% of these SSIs are coming from the source providers, which are, of course, the global custodians and the prime brokers, because that's the golden source of SSI data. And I think what I'll close on is another crucial kind of element to consider. It's only really possible to accurately track, analyze, and measure your performance and your counterparty's performance when you're using automated electronic solutions. But you can't track Excels, Word documents, and PDFs, and of course, the dreaded fax machine. So I think it's another reason why the focus should be to automate the entire post-trade lifecycle.
Absolutely. Again, that automation point, and thank you for mentioning PSET. And I think, CTM clients have got a dress rehearsal in place, from October on your platform to get ready for the end of year, and it becomes regulation in the EU. So good work there. Thank you very much, DTCC. Maybe if we can go to Simon for your views, what must firms kind of anchor themselves to get themselves over the line?
I think now is the priority to turn awareness into execution. And MJ said it, automation, that's one part. Usually that requires a bit of development. Budget, probably already quite late, to be honest. But provider readiness and testing preparation, that needs to be locked down before 2027. I think that's the priority now in 26.
Definitely. That's a good
Brief
point.
and short.
Very good. Very, very efficient. Let's go to Celine then, please.
Yeah, well, of course, I was going to say implementation, focus on implementation, automation. But not only that, I think it's crucial to keep analyzing your own business, understanding what will be the shift of the activity, how you're going to use the new functionality, because we know, for example, a safety gating event, we didn't talk about that one yet, but definitely it's a new functionality that will be implemented. Of course, you need to implement it if you're willing to use it, but there's also now the whole analysis on how are you going to use it, for which a part of your activity will you use it, how is it going to impact your liquidity management in a T+1 world. I think all those questions, now that we've identified how we need to automate or improve our system to cope with the faster timing, it's really now how the business will change, and also how are you going to help your global investors, because it's not a EU move for EU investors, a UK move for UK investors. It's a global move. We have global investors coming from Asia, coming from the US. We need or the American region, and we need to see how we can help them as well, because time zone difference will not help them in a T+1 world. So I think that's another focus that we should look at. We've looked at the system, and we still need to work at that system improvement, but business-wise, what can we do for participants across the globe, and how to use the tool now that will be implemented?
So it's being aware of the footprint, the footprint around you and your own footprint. Perfect. Thanks, Celine. Marko.
Do you want me to be boring or not boring?
Never boring, Marko. You're never boring.
As I know, I could repeat a lot of things that Celine and Simon have said already. Yeah, but I think if it was one suggestion that I would give everybody on the call is look at your data. Yeah, I mean this is kind of summing it up in terms of also where Matthew was coming on. Yeah? You need to revise your business model. You need to look at how you do trades, but you can only do that if you know where you stand today. Yeah, I mean, when we discussed we get 80% of the instructions on trade data. That there are some clients which are close to 100%. Yeah? They are probably less problematic in terms of that they need to speed up their process. Yeah, but they may have to look at things like, since Celine kindly mentioned, do they want to use the gating event? Yeah, how does T+1 change their funding cycle or their liquidity management? Yeah, others may have to do more. Yeah, but I think in that sense, we can only encourage everybody. Either check your data in-house, speak to your custodian, speak to your CSD, so that you can get a place where you are right now, and then to determine the gap, and that will drive. When we look at budget and preparations, that will be the driving the need, how much you have to do. Yeah, and since we've been talking about holiday, the biggest mistake you could do at the moment is saying, okay, I still have time. Yeah. Yes. In principle, you still have time until October, so that's about a year and 4 months. Yeah. But then you have summer holiday that takes away almost 2 months. Yeah. Then you have the Christmas holidays, another month more or less is gone. Yeah. You have another Easter break, and you have another summer holiday. Yeah. So if you take all this away, you're left with less than 12 months of actual work, and then you need to be ready actually to do the testing early next year. Yeah, and then if that's not happening, then you're set up for being rather late on a T+1.
Absolutely. I think I've not heard anyone break down the latent time in our 15 months. So that's great. Thank you, Marko. And we had an interesting question come through. And yeah, just maybe Simon, if you could maybe take this one. What do the CSDs, especially the people on the call, do to help the market participants? So we were looking for concrete actions, not just propositions and suggestions. So what are you guys doing for the industry and market participants?
Yeah, that's a good question, to be honest. And we were asked many times from our clients, how can they, let's say, simulate the situation? And that's what we did. We created a simulator, meaning taking current volumes, current workflows, transform it to T+1, and show them as well the weaknesses in the whole process, and they can investigate on their end where they have bottlenecks in their, let's say, process. I think that's a appreciated feature from our clients.
It sounds very interesting. It sounds like a Formula One simulator. I like that, but for T+1.
Similar,
Perfect.
Not as sexy as this one, but
well, I don't know.
Almost as fast as it.
Absolutely, accelerated settlement. Celine, Marko, anything to add from your side?
We do have something similar. Sorry, Celine, I let you talk first because I did this one time. You go first, ladies first. Apologies for that.
No, thank you. No, well, I think we're doing, if I'm looking now, putting my hat on the ICSD side, we're doing quite some development and to really try to help as much tools to our participant. We don't know. I think there's still a lot of unknowns on T+1. We know that settlement activity will shift, but by how much, we don't know. I think all those elements that will be confirmed as we move along and maybe as well after implementation. And that's why we decided to offer and develop a new series of tools to put in the toolkit so that depending on how the market situation will evolve, we have something to respond to that. In addition, we're working quite a lot as well with our participants. We have a lot of webinars, documentation, of course, but we're also working a lot on the data perspective to help our participants understand where they stand in a T+2 world and how they will be able to evolve and how their activity will evolve on a T+1. So I think that concretely we're doing quite a lot of action with our own participants to really help them understand what does it mean T+1 for their own activity.
Yeah. And I think just overlaying T2 into that T+1 so you can, know where you are today to know where you could be or where your risk is tomorrow.
Exactly.
MJ, I've got a question for you just come in. Do you know if there will be a standard model of confirmation for all brokers or counterparties?
Depends how commercial you want me to be. No, I'm joking. There can, of course, be a single standard model, but I think what we're going to start to see now, especially the work that's been done by the task forces, is making sure that relevant data points are captured on whichever confirmation or allocation messaging you use or platforms you use. Of course, we operate one across Europe and the globe. There's lots of choice out there. We're not the only game in town. But I think what we will start to see is those relevant 15 or 16 or 17 data points that should be captured as part of that process. And I can definitely see that drive going forward to make sure that those that aren't quite conforming to that, I'm glad to say we do, but those that aren't will start to step up and hopefully provide that for the people that are paying for the services.
Yeah, I think it's about that information pack, any vendor, custodian, CSD, whatever your role, where you're providing a service to clients, then you'll be providing an information pack. So yeah, hopefully other providers are on the ball as you are, MJ. Great. I think maybe in the interest of time, we have run 5 minutes over. There is a question come through on a software provider offering SECOM?
Yeah, that's the Swiss system, yeah.
So the question is, how can a software provider offering SECOM, for example, in terms of a service bureau, help customers, and what is the impact on that side? I don't know if that's one you can answer now, Simon, or we can take it offline.
To be honest, I would say we take that offline because
I think so.
I don't know exactly what is expected as an answer from that. I mean, a service bureau actually stands in between a client, is a technical connectivity provider, and therefore for sure. There is no different treatment from a way-to-connect stand directly. But let's take that offline.
Okay, perfect. We will do that. So whoever's asked that, if you could maybe just provide your name, then we will get back to you, and copying all attendees on those responses as well. So look, I thought this would happen because, you know, having like 4 stellar panelists, real authorities in their field, you know, I thought time was going to be tight and we could keep talking, I think, for hours. It's great to have fellow T+1 lovers on a call. So yeah, I think just firstly, a huge thank you to the 4 of you. You've been outstanding panelists. It's been a pleasure. And, you know, keep an eye out for the next poll survey. It is going to be in Q3. We obviously have a year to go coming up in October. Enjoy your summer holidays, spend your time wisely, and please do feel free to download the key findings from the ValueExchange website. If not, we'll be providing the links for you in the chat function. So thank you for your time and have a good summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.